Today I'm talking to one of the funniest people in Australian television. He has been on our screens for more than 10 years and is still going mighty strong. He's interviewed many Hollywood celebrities and other famous people from around the world. Rove McManus, thanks for talking to me today.
Elaine, thank you very much for having me.
Just to start off, so we can clear the air, what is your real name?
My real name is John McManus, the third.
Middle names?
Oh, that goes with me to the grave.
You have said before that your sister Catherine, that she was the first person that called you Rove. Why was that, and why do you think it stuck?
I don't know either. The belief I have had is that the nickname came about, it had evolved from other nicknames. So I started out with my name being John. They called me Jovial John because I played around as a kid, and that became, Jovi, Rovey, Rove, and then it kind of stopped. It went to Grover for a while. There's an old home movie footage of me doing a silly dance, and my sisters are calling me Grover. But then it kind of went back to just being Rove. And I guess it stuck because when I started performing stand-up comedy, I had only just left high school, and I didn't want anybody who knew me from school coming to see me when I was still very green and not very good. So I performed under my nickname, which was what all my family called me anyway, but used my nickname so that, they wouldn't just see John McManus was performing and come and see me. And then I made a name as my nickname, and so it stuck. So what was a very personal nickname that just those who knew me very well called me now is what everybody knows me as, and less people know me by my real name. So it's kind of flipped around a little bit.
Well, hopefully now most of the world will know your real name.
Yes, the entire world.
Does she still call you Rove, Catherine?
Oh, everybody does. Yeah, everybody does. I get sometimes variations on my nickname, so I get Rovey from some people, Rover from others. I have a friend who calls me Grover, so even my nickname itself gets turned into a nickname. Yeah, the only person who still calls me John is my grandmother, and even then she calls me Little John because my dad was a John and my grandfather was a John. So when I call her up, even now at 35 years old, I have to say, "Hi, Grandma, it's Little John."
That's what grandmothers are for.
It is. It makes it sound like, I'm one of the merry men off to rob from the rich and give to the poor.
You attended a Catholic primary school and college in Western Australia. Are you religious?
I'm not religious. No. Short answer.
Do you do anything Catholic?
I sacrifice goats? No, I'm more a spiritual person than a religious person. So, I believe that there's a someone or a something that is driving the bus, or that we're all sort of connected somehow spiritually. But, I don't sort of read the Bible from start to finish and live my entire life by that. I think there's a bit of flexibility in there that most indoctrined religions don't necessarily give you.
Because I'm Jewish, so I don't know what the Catholic...
Catholic is guilt, same as you guys. It's a bit of, live your life right. And actually, I find Catholic is a bit more... so long as you are a Catholic, you're right and everyone else is wrong. And as long as you go to church on a Sunday, you can speak ill of other people and feel a bit better about yourself.
When you were at school, were you the class clown or were you a diligent student?
I was a bit of both. I was a diligent enough student, certainly in primary school. When I got to high school, you needed to do a little bit more than just get by. You had to do extra study and things like that. So I was probably just above average student. I wasn't the best at everything, but I passed well enough. I had the word underachiever on most of my report cards long before Bart Simpson made it cool. I used to. I have friends who say to me now, "You were the class clown," or "I always knew you would end up doing this that you're doing now." And I thought, well, I didn't know back then, so I don't quite know how you did. I think it's an easy thing in hindsight for people to say, "Oh yes, he was always like that at school." But with my friends, my friends were I hung with a group of people that we all mucked around and cracked jokes as much as the next person. So think any one of them, for the sense of humour they had, I think could have, if they wanted to, worked in the entertainment industry if they had the inclination. I don't think I necessarily stood out more than anyone else. I got into doing performing and plays that maybe brought out my personality a little bit more in sort of year 11 and 12, but I wouldn't necessarily have been dubbed the class clown, I don't think, anyway.
Do you remember who the teacher was that suggested you start taking drama classes when you were 9?
Yes, his name was Mr. Keith McNaught, and is now a principal of a primary school in Perth. And I still keep in touch with him, look, very sporadically, but still when I go home to Perth, I have family that are still there, and it's such a relatively small city in any way that you still keep in touch with people when you can, when you're there. So I remember him and the experience well.
Did you further your education after you'd finished secondary school?
I did 2 years of a fine arts degree. I took a year off just to work. I worked at a bottle shop during the week and then in a bar on weekend, which left me no time at all to go out and socialise, but I saved up a lot of money. And then I signed up to do an animation course and couldn't get in because there were too many positions filled. So I took my second option, which was just to study fine arts. So I majored in painting and minored in sculpture and did 2 years of that. And then by that stage was performing stand-up regularly. So I decided I wanted to move to Melbourne to further that career path. And so I said to my parents, I'm moving out of home to have a crack at this stand-up thing, and they probably thought I meant move up the road. And they said, well, where do you want to move to? And I said, Melbourne. And the one proviso was that I couldn't quit my degree, I just had to defer. So that's what I've done. So technically, should anything go horribly wrong with my career from here on in, I could always go back and complete that third year and become a painter.
Do you still have an interest in art?
Yeah, absolutely. I still, I still draw when I can, and not so much painting, but I used to do a lot of life art, nude model stuff, and I've certainly enjoyed doing that because I could always cartoon as a kid. Quite naturally, I was able to do cartoon drawings and caricatures, but didn't really know how to draw properly. I couldn't really do a still life or anything like that, so that's why I wanted to learn how to do that properly. I don't sort of set up the easel and put a bunch of fruit in a bowl and paint it, but certainly when I can, will just happily just sort of draw for my own enjoyment.
How old were you when you got your first job cleaning up vomit at a Western Australian pub? I
was the legal age of 18.
Way before that, you started your television career at 12 on the ABC, is that right, on Caboodle?
Yes. Wow. I missed my first week of high school because we were shooting, and when you're starting at a new school, as everybody is when you usually go to high school, a whole lot of new people and all the friendships and social groups are all sort of reset. It's a really cool way to come in where you miss the first week while everyone's getting to know each other, and you come in as the mysterious kid week 2, and when everyone asks, where were you last week, you say, I was off shooting a TV series. What did Caboodle involve? Me playing netball. It was basically the series was, or the idea was, every episode was a different story, and the episode I was in was called Marty Makes a Move, and I played this kid Marty who moves from the city to the country, and in doing so discovers he is now at a very small school and he's the only boy in his class, and how he deals with that. Was that just a one-off appearance, or was that a regular show? It was a regular show, but as I said, every episode was a different story. So one week would be like a piece of animation, the next week would be a story that was set somewhere else, telling a different tale. So every episode had a different story in it. And so this was just the one episode I did that told the story. The start of the episode was the beginning of the story, and it finished up by the end, and then next week was something completely different. At 21, you sold your car, like you said, and left WA for Melbourne to become a comedian. You have done your homework, yes. Yeah. Was that a tough decision? It was. I loved Nelson. and it was a little Mazda 323, and
You
was
named it.
just the best car. I mean, everybody loves their first car, and even to this day, I still regret that I don't have a photo of Nelson, but he took me to many a comedy gig and got me home in the middle of the night, and had surprisingly more storage space than you'd expect for a hatchback, and it broke my heart to have to sell him, but I did.
You don't know who you sold it to?
Well, not personally, but I do remember the day well, because there was a guy, some very angry, crusty middle-aged guy who came up and went to buy it, and then I just needed to get rid of it. I'd sort of planned to move very quickly, and so just needed to sell. And then at the last minute, a young couple turned up around my age, where the boyfriend was going to buy the car for his girlfriend, and they really liked it. So I after having already made a verbal agreement, shaking hands with this other guy that I didn't quite like, this young couple came up. I really liked them. They seemed to like the car, and I felt it was going to a good home. So I turned around and said to the angry old man, "You can't have it anymore. I'm giving it to them." And he, justifiably so, was not very pleased with me and stormed off. But I was very happy that it was going to a nicer family.
Since then, you have worked on all the TV stations in Australia, Channel 31, ABC, even the Comedy Channel and Channel 9, and obviously Channel 10. Did you plan on working on TV when you were 21, or was your aim to become a comedian, and just a comedian?
I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to perform, and I found comedy was what I enjoyed more. Even before I was into performing, I loved watching comedy. I loved watching sitcoms and stand-up and comedy films. That was where my passion lay. And then I started to get into acting, and again found I enjoyed performing comedy roles more because of the instant reaction you get from an audience that you don't get when you perform a drama. You can present an amazing piece of dramatic theatre, but it's not till after you finish and you either read reviews or see people afterwards that they can tell you what they thought. Whereas comedy, as soon as you deliver that line, it either gets a laugh or it doesn't, and you can tell right from the get-go whether you're doing well or not, and if the audience is enjoying it or not. And more importantly, then you can change, if it's not working, you can change the delivery, you can change a line or a word here or there, and all of a sudden what wasn't working can suddenly work again. And I found that as a medium to be very inspiring. So yeah, when I started getting into comedy, I was working in scripted comedy and sketch performing, but it's really hard to sort of find a place to perform it. So I started doing stand-up. So it wasn't necessarily my first love, and it's a scary form of comedy to get into. But I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to act. I didn't know if I wanted to host. I didn't know if I wanted to do stand-up, but I knew comedy was it. And then I got my gig on 31 and was hosting talk variety show, and in doing so went, aha, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is fun. This is a great mix of performing scripted material, getting to be yourself, but you still perform, and you're not just a straight host. So it was from there that I realised, here is my calling, this is what I want to do.
At the ABC, you worked on Good News Week. Channel 31, you worked on the show called The Loft. Mm-hmm. On the Comedy Channel, you worked on a show called Dilemma. Mm-hmm. Can you briefly explain what these shows were?
Well, The Loft was pretty much what we do now, but with no money. We were doing it all for free. Everyone was a volunteer. The only money we had was the $50 we had to pay to the makeup lady every week, so we were actually out of pocket. Good News Week was very much like Good News Week is now, and our Dilemma was very similar to what you see nowadays with shows like Good News Week and Spicks and Specs and ADBC, or these sort of panel comedy shows. But instead of dealing with, as they do, looking at news of the week or music or history, ours was looking at dilemmas, moral dilemmas. So, you and your team would be given a scenario like you find a wallet with $50 in it. What do? Do you keep it or do you track down the owner? And then you would tell me what you would do, and then your partner would come back into the studio and they would be given the same scenario and be told, right, what do you think they did? Did they take the money or did they give it back? And, you just kind of play around with that mechanic. But that was basically it. But I didn't really enjoy that much because it was just straight out hosting. I didn't really get to play. I just thought I had to be the mediator, so it didn't really excite me as much as some of those others did.
Do you reckon it would work today?
Possibly. I mean, there's a lot of those shows out there. Again, maybe for something like the Comedy Channel or possibly the ABC would like it. But, yeah, I mean, it had its flaws. You'd have to look back at it. But there's plenty of other shows that have long since finished up that have had a comeback, so who knows? But not with me hosting.
After your first season of Rove Live on Channel 9 in 1999, great reviews weren't enough to renew your contract at Channel 9. Was this a setback, or were you confident in the show after just one season?
Oh, absolutely confident with the show after just one season, which is why I thought we'd get asked back, but we didn't. We had plenty of options thrown our way and offers from the network, but not to do the show again, just a world of other things that didn't appeal as much. And so I quite happily walked away, and people even now would say to me, well, geez, that was a very brave thing to do, or were you nervous about what your options were? But to me, we had performed 10 weeks of television, which is 10 weeks more than anyone else I knew at the time had done, and it was a great show. We loved doing it. It was something that we were all proud of, so we could quite happily set foot back into the comedy world, knowing that we had presented a good show that we could stand by. And, I couldn't have done a solo stand-up tour before that 10 weeks and could afterwards, which is what I went to do. So, there was really nothing but positives for me, as much as we would have liked to have kept going. To have walked away was not the end of the world for us.
But then the show got picked up by Channel 10, and you've recently had your 10-year anniversary show. Was that a big achievement?
Absolutely. Especially when you look back at this little show that, if you had have said to us when we started back in 1999, do you think this show would still be around in 10 years? I would have thought, well, if it was, probably still at 11 o'clock at night. And, here we are through all these different incarnations and guises and formats, still doing pretty much the same thing, and in a far more competitive time slot. We're now 8:30 on a Sunday night, which is staggering to think that we're still around and still going.
You have interviewed tons of people on Rove Live. Who have been the best and worst entertainment-wise?
Oh, best is a long list. Look, Elmo's obviously up there as a number one, and I think put us on the map more than anyone else. A lot of our international fans who watch us through our website found us thanks to Elmo on YouTube. For me, being a comedy nerd, Billy Connolly was a favourite, especially because that interview was meant to go for about 7 minutes and went 20 because he was so great. And we just kept going, and there was a screw up with the floor manager, couldn't tell that I didn't know. There was basically, I was meant to get a wind up and didn't, so I thought, well, I'm maybe just meant to keep going, and did, and amazingly, he can keep that up. Between the two of us, we were able to do a 20-minute interview for the television. He did a 15-minute spot with us on our radio show that we were doing at the time, and then I did another 1-hour radio special with him after that. And in what was maybe an hour and a half worth of conversation with him, we didn't talk about the same thing twice. Even if we brought up the movie he was there to promote, I asked it in a new way and he answered it in a new way. That was a moment for me that I probably won't get back. And look, as far as least favourite goes, every Big Brother housemate. The first run was fascinating. Second, the sequel was never as good as the original, and by number 3, I think we're all kind of over it.
After you've had a certain guest on the show once, is it easier or harder to get them on again in the future, 2 or 3 years down the track?
Usually it's easier, and that's I think a testament to us as a show. It's one thing to get people on, but for them to enjoy themselves and for us to have done a good job enough for them to want to come back, I think is more important.
When you interview people like Cameron Diaz or Jack Black, do you get nerves beforehand and almost think you're going to just not do it?
As I get older and a little more experienced, I still get excited about people coming on, and geez, I've got as much signed CDs and posters and photos as much as anyone would if they had the opportunity to meet a lot of these cool people. But the more you meet them, celebrities in inverted commas, the more you realise, look, most of them are pretty down to earth, and they just happen to be recognisable or job that puts them out there, and a lot of the stuff you read and hear isn't actually true. They're all pretty cool.
One of your other big shows is Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Was that your idea or Channel 10's idea?
The idea was, Channel 10 bought the rights to the show, which is an American show created by Mark Burnett, who also brought Survivor and The Apprentice to the world. And, yeah, they bought what they call the format rights, which means they have the ability to make the show here in Australia, and they approached me and our company and said, do you want to make it for us? And so we did.
Do guests ever get annoyed when they can't beat 8-year-old kids?
Absolutely. Who doesn't? I'm lucky I've got an earpiece where someone feeds me the answers.
When did you make up Roving Enterprises, which is your production company, and what was your aim with that?
Well, the aim in the beginning was the whole reason it was set up. When we started at Channel 9, we were asked, well, what do you want as far as contractual demands? And a paycheck was all I needed. I was happy. I was just a stand-up comedian living in a tiny little one-bedroom flat with not enough money to, either I had to pay my rent or feed myself. They were my two options for where my bank account went for the month. And so, really, I said, look, the only demand, if you want to call it that I had was the ability to say no, that if an idea came along that I didn't like, that, it's all of a sudden you're hosting the show in a chicken suit this week. I just wanted the ability to say, look, I don't like that idea. And they said, well, if you want to do that, you have to produce it yourself. And so that's what I did. I set up a production company, which was really just a name on a letterhead at that point in time. And when we started, it employed me, Pete, Dave, and Corinne, our cast, and our writer, Kynan, and that was it. It was 5 of us. And now we've got, a couple of buildings and 100-something people. But initially it was just, that was all it was to just sort of have a bit of creative freedom. And now, it gives me not only my own creative freedom, but other people as well who if they have an idea and they want to do it, then hopefully we can make it happen.
Did you ever think of moving back home?
To Perth?
Yeah. Did that ever cross your mind?
Well, not for work. Obviously I still miss my family. But for the same reason that I moved from Perth to Melbourne, that still exists. That, to do what I wanted to do at the level I wanted to do it, unfortunately the opportunities weren't there in Perth. I could still make a decent living, but could only get so far. And if you wanted to extend yourself beyond that, I had to move east.
You have been on the Jay Leno show 4 times. How did you meet the American TV talk show legend?
He got in contact, his people got in contact with my people, because we both have people, you see. We don't have each other's number, but, you just find a way. The very convoluted way I heard it was they had one of their producers was on holiday in New Zealand and saw my show in New Zealand, because we air in New Zealand, and then went back home to the States saying, there's this interesting guy, an interesting show, and if we ever need someone, I think he'd be good fun. And then Jay heard about it and became very interested in the idea of the guy that does what he does on the other side of the world, and so they got in touch with me and said, look, if you're ever in town, let us know. And I said, well, how about I get on a plane and make myself in town for you, whenever you want. And so they said, right, well, we set a date, and off we went. And then the first time went really well, so they asked me back, and same each subsequent time.
So you've had 4 dates with Jay Leno. That's pretty cool.
It's not bad. It's pretty good. And for someone like me, the Tonight Show is it. That's the show that started it for everybody who sits behind a desk and interviews people and plays around. So to actually be a guest on, and not just doing stand-up, but to actually be a guest on there was a huge thrill and an honour.
Your dream of hosting a show in the US, a talk show, is that slowly becoming a reality?
I don't know. Look, that's not a dream. I'm living my dream at the moment. So, really, if anything was to happen in the States, is just icing on the cake, really. But it's not something I'm actively pursuing. It's as with the Leno thing, it's just one of those things that happens. You get a call and someone says, "Hey, can you do you want to come and do something? And, the world's a much smaller place than it used to be with YouTube and things like that. What we do being so isolated is not so isolated anymore. So it's just people becoming more aware of what I do more than anything else.
Are you really a second cousin of David Hasselhoff?
No. IMDb is incorrect. And I don't farm blue-tailed kangaroos either.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's as bad as Wikipedia, my IMDb page.
So you've looked yourself up on Google, obviously.
Oh, no, I get asked that one a lot, and I know exactly where people have gone to find it.
Did you name your 3 pet rats after Peter Hellier, Merrick Watts, and Tim Ross?
Incorrect, I don't even have any pet rats.
God.
I can see where we're headed with these, but keep going, it's good to clear them up.
How long have you had your collection of Pez dispensers?
Oh, no, that is true. I've had Pez dispensers, since I was a kid. I had a couple when I was a kid, but didn't really collect them till I probably hit my 20s and had a bit more of a disposable income of my own to spend on what I wanted to do. So probably when I got a place of my own, so that was, I was 21 and started collecting them. So, when you're sort of in those early stages of dating, nothing says, hey ladies, like a bunch of Pez dispensers on a shelf.
How many do you have?
Oh, now I've got, I couldn't tell you, a lot of them. And they're all stored away now. I ended up with too many. So, I run out of shelf space, so they're all just sort of stored away in a box. But I still collect them, and I've got a dealer up the road, and there's a candy store up the road, and when they get new ones in, they save them for me. So I don't have to worry about, when the Kung Fu Panda ones come out, and you've got, all of them except Tigress, and you can't find her anywhere. Well, they make sure that they keep them all for me.
What's your favourite character?
I'm still one of the classic ones I've got is an original Speedy Gonzales, which was the first one I ever got back in the 70s, and that one's pretty cool. It looks really weird because they did back then. They don't look very cool. And I've also got a Fozzie Bear that I used a lot. It used to be, like, I'd go out and actually have a Pez dispenser in my back pocket, and it was like, most people would smoke a cigarette or something, I'd just pop a Pez every now and again. And he, being the comedian of the Muppet Show, was the one I used to keep in my pocket all the time at gigs and things, and just sit there popping Pez. Yeah, so I have a fond connection with my Fozzie Bear.
Are your nicknames Fernaldo, Brutus, and Mr. 20 Centimeters?
No, and the third one is a sort of a yes, because I was hosting filling for American Rosso in Sydney with Peter Hellier, and we were talking about, I think it was IMDb or something like that, and how you can add your own facts there. So we said to everybody, and I think it had to be, I think it's 20 people or 50 people, tell them that, different people tell them this fact is true, they will print it as being the truth. So we said to everybody, well, I think we had me in as a director of some weird movie, and said, we'll tell everybody that my nickname is Mr. 20 Centimeters, and enough people, different people, got in touch with them to say it was true, and so they printed it. So it's not actually true, but I told everybody to say it, so I will accept that one. So
do you have any other quirky nicknames?
No, not that of broadcast quality.
When you swore in your Goldlogie speech in 2005, I think it was 2005, did you plan that, or is that off the top of your head?
Oh, no, absolutely, I hadn't planned it. We were, because I was hosting, and the Logie's, like a lot of awards ceremonies, is on delay, which means we start in the room about an hour before it goes to air. Oh. For two reasons. One, most importantly, they can beep out anything, and two, if it starts to run a bit long, they can actually edit as they go. So, for example, Australian Idol got up, and they made a very long speech after winning, but the executive producer got up and made a speech, and for the people watching at home, they don't know who he is. He's the man who works behind the scenes. But then Andrew G stepped up and said some thank yous as well. So the producer backstage said, right, that's our edit point. The people at home won't see the executive producer of Idol that they don't know or care about, and we'll cut straight to Andrew G, and that saves us 2 minutes. And that all adds up at the end of the night. So So I'm there accepting my award. I've got an earpiece, and the the producer is in my ear saying, "Wrap it up," because we're catching up to being live. We've run so late. So I thought, well then, and I actually said this to the room. Well, we're running a bit over time, so they're probably going to cut half of this out. So I'll make it a bit easier for them, and I'll give them something to cut out. And then swore, and it was just meant to be for the room's benefit, and then they could cut it out, and I'll say thank you and move on. Well, they didn't. They decided that they thought it was funny and would put it to air. So I kind of got in trouble for it, even though I said, I'm going to swear now, and here it comes, and you can cut this out. And look, to be honest, there's enough of a delay there that they could have beeped it if they wanted to, but they chose not to. So everyone got a bit up in arms, but the thing is, the show isn't live, so if they really wanted to, they could have cut it out.
Did you once work as a comedian on a Ukrainian cruise ship?
That is true.
Yes, I got one.
There we go.
Explain. As you would say, discuss.
Well, simple as that. There was a cruise ship, and it would spend the first half of the year in the northern hemisphere and the second half of the year in the southern to make sure it was always following summer. And they were based out of Fremantle in Western Australia, and they would do 3 or 4 sort of trips up through Bali and places like that, and I got booked with a friend of mine to be the ship's entertainment, and we just had to tell jokes, and we got paid to sit on a cruise ship and tell jokes to people. And so I did that for a couple of weeks, came back, and they said, hey, we liked you, do you want to come on the next cruise? So I got picked up by my mum at the wharf and said, look, we've been asked to go on the next cruise, so I quickly need to go and get a change of clothes and everything. She said, right, well, when does it leave? And I said, this afternoon. And then we were gone for another 3 months. 3 weeks, I should say, 3 weeks.
Were they all Ukrainian passengers?
No, Aussie passengers, but Ukrainian crew, which Ukrainian crew, but Aussie staff, meaning if the person who served you your meals or your waiter was an Aussie, so you could speak the language, but the cook was Ukrainian, the cleaning staff was Ukrainian. It did also mean there was a hairdresser and all that on board because you were gone for so long. I went to get my hair cut, and I couldn't speak Russian, and so I was trying to say to them, I just used to get sort of a very short sort of number 4 sort of clippers on my head, and was trying to describe that to her, and she didn't understand what I meant, and I pointed to the clippers and went, just the clippers. And she goes, and picks it up without putting the little attachment on, and just shaved down to nothing down the side of my head. And so I freaked out, and she tried to adjust it on the other side, and it looked like some weird mohawk, and I said, look, forget it, just do the whole thing, and shave my head clean.
How long ago was that?
Oh, gosh, 1992, 93.
Did the crew understand your jokes?
The crew didn't, but thankfully the passengers did, and that was really all that mattered.
Alright, so now I can skip the kangaroo farm question, is that right? And how did you come up with your show's closing quote, say hi to your mum for me? Have you had that since you started?
No. I went through a phase of finishing all my stand-up gigs with a different sort of line, where I'd say, thanks very much, I'm Rove McManus, and blah, 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 like would be, I'm Rove McManus, and I think I left the gas on. I'm Rove McManus, and I shot Mr. Burns. And I would just change it. I was just being silly, really. And for one of them, I was actually on the phone. I was with a friend of mine, and I was actually on the phone to another friend of mine. And when I finished up the conversation, he was off to visit his folks. And I said, well, see you soon. And I said, and say hi to your mum for me. And then hung up. And the other friend of mine who was in the room started laughing and said, that sounds really weird out of context. So the next time I did my gig, I said, thanks very much, I'm Rove McManus, and say hi to your mum for me. And it kind of got a laugh. And so the next gig, I used it again rather than change the line. And before you knew it, that was my thing. I think, and then a friend of mine, I think another performer, Michelle Laurie, actually it was, a comedian, said to me, about, I wish I had a line. She said, because you know how you have your say hi to your mum for me. And I thought, do I? I think I've only said it 3 times, but apparently that's my thing now. So I thought, well, I'll keep it, and it's worked pretty well.
And finally, you ran in the Queen's Baton relay before the 2006 Commonwealth Games. How did you get that opportunity, and was it fun?
You just get called. I think they look for various people, whether it be everyday Aussies or some that are a bit more well known, and ask them to run with the Queen's Baton. And I happily did it and ran up Oxford Street in Sydney, and it was fun. It was uphill most of the way, which was. I wish they had warned me, because you got cameras on you. They film it. It gets covered by the news. You got all these people lined up the street cheering, watching the whole thing, and you think, geez, I don't want to look like I'm unfit. I can't run 200 metres uphill. So I got to the end, and I could sort of see the next person in line who takes the baton after me, and I just started sprinting like a show-off. And then when they took the baton, we smiled for our photo, and off they went, and then I happily collapsed in a heap.
Rove McManus, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. It's been a real pleasure and an honour, and whether I make it onto TV or not, this is something I will cherish for absolutely the rest of my life.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and may I say, merci beaucoup, Alain.